right, so this is we're in a series called Let's Go, and it's based off this premise that hey, it doesn't matter how immovable our faith is. If we've got the strongest faith that we could possibly have, if we are not doing something with it, we're not living it out. Right? It's just simply not living out the gospel. So in this series, we're talking about what that next step is, and sometimes those next steps are hard. But before we get to that, we've got to get something on the table. We just get it out there. I hope it doesn't split the church or anything like that. But yes, I have started a mustache. That's it. All right. It's okay. All right. It's all right. I got a Joel Williams and Brian Bradshaw starter kit going on. And so, hey, okay, I haven't been kissed in over a week, but hey, you know what, maybe we'll get there. John 15 is where we're going to be. John 15. All right, and it's the same scripture we had last week. And this is part 2 of last week's sermon. And this idea that, listen, I told you there's 2 kinds of people. I go to Food Line in Mount Holly this week. I get my cart. I go to put it up. And in the 2 lanes, there are not 2 type of grocery carts. There are now 3. The third, right? They're making these carts look like cars for the kids, right? Totally threw my game off. Right, so I'm sitting in there and I'm sorting, right, the little ones and the big ones, which you should if you want to get into heaven. You should separate it. You should not put them, right, in the same. There's a kid making $9 an hour that's got to go out there and fix that, okay? Right, so, but there's 2 kinds of people. You either put your Keurig pod in the trash can when you're done with it, or you are a sinner. Okay? There are either Christians and there are disciples. Which are you? Right? Which are you? You know, and we want to believe, right? What's a Christian? We get all these answers, right? And they're all good. They're all, mostly are positive, and we would say, yes, but, I don't do that. Or, no, I don't believe that. I'm a Christian, but I'm not like this. Or I'm a Christian, but I don't think like that, right? We have all of these connotations of what a Christian is or is supposed to look like, right? And understand this. I told you, Christian was not a term that the early followers of Jesus even called themselves. It was actually a derogatory term used, right, to describe them by their critics, right? We see in Acts 11, verse 26, when he found him, he brought him to Antioch. So for a whole year, Barnabas and Saul met with the church and taught great numbers of people. The disciples were called Christians first at Antioch. Right? So if the followers of Jesus didn't call themselves Christians, like what did they call themselves? And we see it right there in Acts 11:26. They call themselves disciples. I told you that the term Christian appears in the New Testament 3 times. Only 3 times. The term disciple, however, is used 281 times to describe the followers of Jesus. Right? Christian functions more as a sociological label than anything, whereas disciple describes a lifestyle. Right? A lifestyle decision that you make to walk in. Right? So the real question that we've got to consider is, what was and is a disciple? Right? What is a disciple? And more importantly, are you one of them? Are you a disciple? You may say you're a Christian, but are you a disciple of Jesus? Right? And I said, hey, I think it helps us step back at what discipleship meant back there in the first century. Discipleship was not a concept invented by Jesus. It was quite common in the ancient world. In Israel, there was an established process for becoming a disciple, and it started at a very young age when, at the age of 5, every Hebrew boy started on this journey, right? They would start off and they would go to Torah school. They would ultimately memorize the first 5 books of the Bible. By age 10, they were fairly well versed in the Torah. They had it memorized. And then they started to weed you out. Right, that they would go through and they wanted the best of the best. Only the best students would go on and continue that through the secondary school, and the rest of the boys were sent home. Right, they were sent home to learn the craft of their family, of their dad, what they did, and you had to apply to become a disciple. You had to apply. You had to go and seek out a rabbi, right, to follow him, and they would continue to pour into him. The best of the best were chosen to be in what we refer to as the Talmud, the Hebrew word for disciple. Right? And the rabbis of that time had the luxury to pick the best of the best. Right? And it's based off of this premise that for a true disciple, it is said that you wanted to be so close to your rabbi in teaching and him and learning from him, right? That whatever he stepped in dusted up on you. You were so close. You wanted to be just like your rabbi, right? To where if they stepped in something, it would get on you. That's how close we wanted to be. And it brings us to John chapter 15. And now you've got the 11 guys sitting in the room with Jesus, the 11 disciples that are left after Judas. Right? He's chosen these 11 to know what he knows, to do what he did. And so with that context, it brings us to John chapter 15. John chapter 15, verse 8. And it says this: "This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. And as Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. And so whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other." Let's pray. God, thank you for your word. Thank you that it's perfect in every way, on every day. Father, even the parts that we don't like, that we may not agree with, Father, thank you for using it as a guide for us. I pray that we are students of your word. Speak through that today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so what is a disciple? What is a disciple? Right? I'm going to give you 4 reasons. I'll kind of review real quick the 2 that we discussed last week, and then we'll finish it up with the other 2. Right? We said, number 1, a disciple of Jesus is someone who has received his love. A disciple of Jesus is someone who has received his love. In verse 9, it says, "As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. So remain in my love." And this was distinctive in Jesus' call to discipleship. Other rabbis, they didn't talk like that. They didn't talk about love. It was all about do this, do that, obey this, obey that, right? But Jesus was the first to talk about love. And more importantly, receiving that love of his. So they chose only the best. Jesus chose the B team. The B team. How do we know they're the B team? Well, because if they were the A team, they would have graduated from discipleship school, right? They would have been with the rabbis. They would have been serving and been disciples of the rabbis. The fact that they were fishermen, that they were tax collectors, and they were of that sort meant that they didn't make it in Torah school. They didn't make the cut, right? So Jesus says, right, I don't care, right? Receive my love and you will be my disciples. right? The fact that they were fishermen, we know that. They didn't make the cut. Right? And he chose and he uses and he changed the world with these 12 B team members. Right? He literally, right, did a movement around people that weren't good enough for church. That's crazy, right? And we've got to understand that the love of God does not find, but rather creates that which it is pleasing to it. Right? The love of God does not find, but rather creates that which is pleasing to it. Jesus didn't love the disciples. He didn't love me because I was lovely, because I had a cool mustache. Right? No. His love made us lovely. There was nothing I could do, right, to get to that point. No, it was from his love, right, that I am made lovely. Number 2, a disciple of Jesus is someone chosen by him for amazing fruitfulness. Right? A disciple of Jesus is someone chosen by him for amazing fruitfulness. Right? In verse 16, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit. Fruit that will last. And so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. Jesus said to this group of people, right, the B team, right, he's telling them it's God's desire to give them abundant, right, eternity impacting fruit. That's what Jesus intends for us. Right, that he wants us, right? He wants us to go. This is a place that many of us, right, will feel tempted to doubt Jesus. Right? We don't doubt Jesus, right? But we doubt his promise that he'll do it in us and through us. Right? We believe he they killed him on a cross, that he went to a grave and he rose again on the third day. We believe all that. Right? We believe that he changed the world. We understand that, but we just don't think, for whatever reason, that he'll do it through us. Right? That he'll use us as a vessel to that. Right? And that's the crisis of your faith oftentimes. You see it in other people, or you see this, and you see that happening, right? And you're like, man, let's go. I'm all for it. But yet you say, but I got this thing. I got this past. I grew up in this family. Right, and you got to understand that God does not need us to do great things in the world. Do you understand that? Right, he doesn't need that. He doesn't need us, right, to further his kingdom. We got to understand that he is doing great things in the world, and guess what? He wants us to be part of it. He wants to use us to be part of that. Right, he doesn't need us, but man, he says, come on, go with me. I chose you. I chose you, the B team. And we're going to go and do awesome things in the world. Those are the first 2 points that we talked about. This, right, the third point. A disciple of Jesus is someone committed to becoming like him. A disciple of Jesus is someone committed to becoming like him. Verse 12 says, my command is this. Love each other as I have loved you. Right? Jesus is putting himself out there as an example. Right? It says, hey, live like I lived. Do what I do. Right? You remember when I was in maybe high school, maybe college, mid to late 90s, I think. Right? The bracelets came out, WWJD. Okay, what would Jesus do? Well, what would he do? What would he do? I got five characteristics of Jesus's identity, right, that should characterize ours. Right? First of all, right, a disciple is a worshiper. A disciple of Jesus, right, becomes like him when they are worshipers. Jesus said the great commandment, everything that we do here is built on the two greats, right? The great commandment and the great commission. All right, we were going to carry out the Great Commission by living out the Great Commandment. All right, Jesus said in the Great Commandment was to love the Lord our God with what? Everything. With all our hearts and our souls and our minds. Right, and that this was the heart of everything else. The center of the Christian's life, plain and simple, is worship. It's worship. Right? The center of our discipleship is not community, is not mission, is not evangelism. Those are all important. Those are all biblical. Those are all things, right, that we've got to pursue. But it's not that. It's worship. Worship is not part of the Christian life. Understand this, okay? Worship is not part of the Christian life. Worship is the Christian life. It is it. Right? Everything that you do is worship. It's not this hour and 15 minutes that we spend together here on Sunday. It's not that. Okay? This is a time of corporate worship where we come together as a body, right? As a body of believers, right? To come together. Right, but it's not worship. It's not the 20 to 30 minutes that we spend before I get up here and preach. That's not worship. Right? You could be really busy with all that other stuff, but if it doesn't come out of a heart of passionate love to God, it's just dry, dead, religious junk. That's all it is. Right? A disciple becomes like Jesus when he is a worshiper. Number 2, right? A disciple of Jesus becomes like him when they become a family member. When they become a family member, what do you mean? The second greatest commandment, Jesus said, was to love our neighbor as ourselves. Jesus had intensified that here in John 15. Right, and we see that in his last teaching, right, to his disciples. We see this in verse 12. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You're not only to love each other, it says you're to be so committed to each other that you lay down your lives for each other. And let me just say this as plainly as I can, right? This is maybe the toe stomping part. A commitment to Jesus is also a commitment to his church. It is. Right? And I'm just going to come straight at you, right? This is maybe the rude part of this sermon, right? I hear a lot of people say, well, I love Jesus. I have a strong relationship with God. I'm just not that committed to his church. And when I say the church, I do mean the local church. And that's not true. That is not true. I know you think it's true. Right? But it's just not. You might have great respect for Jesus, right? But Jesus very clearly said that if you loved him, you would be committed to his church. He says it here, right here in John 15. You're to love each other so much that you lay down your lives for each other. Listen, you can't do that for somebody you're not connected to or in a relationship with. You can't do it. Right? Jesus told Peter in John 21, if you love me, show that by how well you take care of my sheep. Right? You can't say you're obedient to Jesus if you neglect those that he commanded you to love. The local church is the tool, is the vessel, right, that he provides to help us do that. The church is the bride of Christ. Do you understand that? You cannot love somebody and hate their bride. You can't. How do you think I'd react? Right? If you say, hey, Chris, we love you. Can you come over to our house for dinner? Right? Come on over, right? We'd love just to sit down and catch up, right? Or, hey, here's a key to my mountain house. All right, enjoy that. That's always welcome, okay? All right? But this invitation is just for you. It's not for Shannon. She can't come. leave her at home. Like, we like you. We don't care for her too much. That conversation's not going to go well. It's not. I'm not coming for dinner. I may take the keys to the Mount House, but I'm not coming. If you love me and want to be friends with me, you have to love and be friends with my life, with my wife, with everything that I am. Right? Thankfully, with Shannon, that's easy. Right? People normally like her better than me. Right? If we get invited back, it's because of her. Right? But that's not going to well. The church is the bride of Christ. You cannot love God and do away with his bride. It can't. It doesn't happen. Right? The church, we say, is not just an event you should attend. It's a community, a family that you should belong to. I believe that. Right? So you're a believer in Jesus. Great. Awesome. High five. But are you a belonger to his church? Right? Have you joined this church, or are you still a spectator? Right? Some of you have been here a while, right? And you haven't joined, right? And listen, understand this. And if you come to the new partners class, you'll hear this. Well, Chris, I don't understand. Why is it so important to partner, to be a partner of the church? Right? And understand that I believe it's a partner with the church. It's not a member. Members pay dues, all right, and think they get something out of that. Right? Partnership, right, is not like that. I just want to partner with you. I want to push the mission forward. Why is it so important? I don't understand that. Listen, it's simply this. It comes down to this. Commitment. Commitment. Right? I think it gives you, right, a purpose to set forth a commitment like, yes, I belong to this. I want to be part of this. Right? I want him to know that they can call on me, they can count on me. That's what it comes down to. Right? Listen, you don't have to be a member of a church to get into heaven. No. Right? But as the bride of Christ, I think it shows a commitment to that. The measure of your commitment to the church is the measure of your commitment to Jesus, and that may sting. Right? And come in person. Be here, right? And you're like, Chris, we're here. Gosh, you know what? You're talking to the choir. I understand that. Right? I get it. Sometimes health considerations keep you at home, right? If you're sick, please don't come. Right, but I think of it like this. Sometimes it's like, especially this is all kind of recent to us coming out of the COVID stupid time. Right, like especially like when we were sick, right, we would quarantine, okay? And listen, I remember when I had it, man, I didn't even see my kids and Shannon, all right? They wouldn't come nowhere near, right? We would quarantine, right? But when I'm healthy, right? I go to my room and FaceTime into dinner for a few minutes. You'd be right to suspect my commitment to our family. Be in person. Be in person. You cannot be connected to Jesus and not be connected with his family. Right? Number 3, right? A disciple of Jesus becomes like him when they are a servant. When they are a servant. Jesus said he came not to be served, but to serve. We didn't read this, but right before this teaching in John chapter 15, Jesus took a water basin and a towel and he washed his disciples' feet and he said, this is how I want you to live too. This is how I want you to live. Right? An imitator of Jesus uses whatever power, position, or privilege that you have to serve. And we apply that in a couple of practical ways. Right? We ask you to do this, all right? The first is we ask you to consider how you're using your gifts and talents. Right? And you can use your talents to do one of two things. One of two things, right? To build a dynasty for yourself or build a kingdom legacy for others? How do you use your talents? Which is it for you? Right? Do you look at your career as a way to build a dynasty for yourself, or to leave a kingdom legacy for others? Right? Whose kingdom are you building with your talents? Yours or his? Right? The second way we apply servanthood is how you serve the church. Right? Everybody should have a ministry job in the church. Okay, you've heard the old joke about, churches like ours. They say, churches like ours are like a football game. At a football game, you got 22 guys in desperate need of rest, surrounded by 50,000 people in desperate need of exercise. It's kind of like it is. Thankfully, right, and hear me on this. Thankfully, it's not quite like that here. I don't know if you know it, but in any given week, it takes about 25 to 30 volunteers, even to serve a church our size, right? You got people obviously in Grove Kids, right? There's at least one guy, maybe two guys that come at 8 o'clock and set up the tents, set up the parking lot, right? And you try that in August, okay? Right? There's people that are trying to greet and connect with people. Right? There's volunteers up here on stage. Right? This isn't a paid band. All right? Right? There's people that volunteer that make this happen. It can't happen without that. Right? And so you need to understand, plug in. There's 3 guys right now walking this campus, right, with walkie-talkies, right, with security. They don't get to come in here and worship. They're outside making sure your kids are okay, right? That nothing's going on right around campus. It takes a lot of that, right, to pull this off. I got the easy part. Right? I got the easy part. We need you. Right? Listen. We need you to be part of what God's doing here in practical ways. Right? I've never had a problem with calling somebody and saying, hey, can you do this? Right? Do you mind? Can you take this food to East Gaston? Can you go and help serve here? And nobody's ever said no. Right? Get into that stream. Right? You're going to get way more out of it than you would by not doing that. Right? We've got to serve. That's how they're going to know you're a disciple. Right? A disciple of Jesus becomes like him when they are a steward. When they are a steward. This is where y'all get nervous, I know. Right? Here's old preacher talk again. No, right? A disciple realizes that anything he or she has ultimately belongs to God and is given to us by him for a purpose. For a purpose. A steward is different than an owner. Okay? Steward, owner. An owner owns what they have. A steward takes care of something someone else owns on their behalf. We're all stewards. Jesus taught that God owns all that we have, and one day we're going to give an account for how we use what he gave us. Do you understand that? Right? Jesus taught there are 2 key moments in heaven. Right? There's 2 key questions in the final judgment that's going to be asked. Number 1, what did you do with my son? What did you do with my son? Number 2, what did you do with my stuff? What did you do with my son? What did you do with my stuff? And you might be ready for the first one. Are you ready for the second one? When it comes to your stuff, right? And yes, tithing is part of that, right? But this is so much more than that. That's the first sign of faithful stewardship, right? Is that. It doesn't stop there, right? Tithing's the beginning of stewardship, but it's not the end. Because at the judgment, I'm not going to give an account for the 10% of what he gave me. I'm going to give an account for all of it. Right? For everything. Did I leverage what he gave me, right, from a stewardship for his purpose? Did I take what he gave me and did I do something with it to further the kingdom, to build a dynasty for myself or a kingdom legacy for others? Right? I challenge many of you, right? If you've been gifted with means, right? Not just the church, but charity, or use it for His purpose. For His purpose. We are all familiar with ROI, return on investment. Are you investing in things with good EROI, eternal return on investment? Right? Given to the United Way, a hospital, right, is good because they help people. Right? But what about giving to programs that help people from a kingdom agenda? Right? Listen, I'll tell you, right? I hope, I believe, I want to strive as we grow, that 25 cents of every dollar that comes in here goes out. That's what I pray for, right? That a quarter of everything that that we bring in goes out to this community, right? I think that if we're going to be disciples of Jesus, right, that's what we're doing, right? And you say, well, Chris, I don't have those financial means. I get it, right? But there's other things you can do, right? Can you open your home for a small group? Right? Can you do things like that? Can you pray? Right? There's always going to be opportunities. You can go, you can serve, you can be part of that. Right? You can be all of those things. Right? You can visit some of our shut-ins. Right? There are those things that you can do. Everyone is supposed to be a steward. Here's the last one. Right? A disciple of Jesus becomes like Him when they are a witness. When they're a witness. When Jesus talks, right, in verse 18 and verse 16 about bearing much fruit that abides, He's referring to two main things. One is our own sanctification, right, our own spiritual growth, the fruit of the Spirit in our lives, right? That's how they'll know us, right? He's talking about being used by God to see people come to know Jesus. Right? When you think about fruit that abides, what better example than that than someone who gets saved through your personal witness? He lives forever with God. Right? We've got to do something with that. Right? If His dust is on you, that will be the main descriptor of your life too. What's your job? I work in a factory. I'm a teacher. I work in a medical office. I'm a financial advisor, right? I'm a Starbucks barista, I don't know. Great. Guess what? You have the same primary responsibility as I do. We all have the same primary responsibility. If you're a disciple of Jesus, your primary responsibility is to seek and to save the lost. That's it. Not just here, around the world. Right, I get asked many times, I think I maybe even shared this with our Wednesday night group, like, we want to take this, right, to the nations, to the world. I just have a hard time stepping over our community to do that, right? So that's why we're trying to get established here in our area, right, to do things locally, right? And we're going to get there, whether it's Peru or whatever doors that God opens. Right, but we have it. Hickory Grove, what's your primary mission in Stanley, Mount Holly, and North Belmont? It is to seek and save the lost. Let's do it. Let's do it. Right, and listen, I know it freaks you out. It freaks you out to go to talk to somebody. I understand that. You know, and I could teach you, we could offer a class on how to do that, right? You don't have to be an expert in apologetics. Tell your story. That's all you have to do. Tell your story. Remember your role. The Holy Spirit will take it, right? The Holy Spirit is going to do what you can't do, right? Tell your story. Love people. Make connections. Right? It doesn't have to be hard. I was in the emergency room, right, with a 15-year-old that got hurt on Thursday night. Right? I was in the emergency room with his mom and dad who were scared out of their minds. right? And listen, I did not sit there, right, and bring out my little bracelet of what salvation means. I didn't do that. I love them. I let them know, hey, please let me know if you need anything, right? And I sat there, a family not in church, right? And I just said, hey, what do you need? Don't get wigged out by it. All right, God's going to open those doors, right? But when He does, guess what? You better step into it, right? Eternity is at hand here, right? And we've got to take that seriously. We've got to stop playing church. This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? We can't just, play church and come here and high five and, oh, worship's good and, man, Chris, you killed it, all this stuff. No, that's not it. We've got to go out and seek and save the lost. That's the method to all of this. This is the method to the madness of why we're reaching out and why we're plugging in and why we're trying to make connections in this community. It is to seek and save the lost. It's to keep the baptismal waters flowing. That's all that matters. Right? I don't care if I baptize 15 people every week and they never come to church. This church. They'll come to some church. They're plugged into a church, right? They're going to get the same message you did. You got to be plugged into a local church, right? We got to get them to heaven. I don't care if they come to Hickory Grove. Get them to heaven. Get them to heaven. Seek and save the lost. Right? A disciple is not someone who simply wants to know what his or her master knows. It's someone who wants to do what his or her master did. These 5 things are what Jesus did, right? These 5 things are how the dust of your rabbi is going to get all over you. And then finally, a disciple of Jesus is someone who is ready to follow Him all the way. All the way. Right? Verse 10, Jesus said, if you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love. He repeats that phrase several times, right, through these scriptures. To be a disciple, Jesus' disciple, you had to be ready to obey Him, to follow Him with no limitations, with no restrictions. Right? He told the rich young ruler, right? We talked about that dude the other day, who had spent his whole life cultivating obedience to the law, who had been the best of the best. One of the guys, right? He made the cut. He made the cut. He made the team, right? That to follow Him, he'd have to give up control of everything in his life, including wealth. And the rich young ruler, as smart as he was, as amazing as he was, right, with all the books of the Bible memorized, he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. Right? And note that word follow in our language now means something totally different. Totally different. We follow celebrities and coaches and health experts on social media. Right? We follow. Right? Well, listen, let me give you a good example. I follow this dude named Andrew Huberman on social media. Okay? He's an American neuroscientist. He makes all of these like out-of-the-box health suggestions, right? Some of them are good, some of them are crazy. Right? He recommends you eat lion's mane mushrooms every day. That you delay drinking coffee until you've been up for 2 hours. That you sit in ice water for at least 11 minutes a week, summer or winter. I don't do those things. Maybe I should. But the point is, I feel the freedom as His follower to take the suggestions I want for Him and leave behind those that I don't. Sometimes he seems kind of trendy and cool, right? Sometimes I just don't want to do what he recommends, and I want my coffee ready when I open my eyes in the morning. I feel perfectly fine, right, saying I'll follow Him, yet choose not to follow everything that He says to do. But with Jesus, it's different. Different. Right? To follow him, you had to mean total submission of your will to his. Why then? This is exactly why I say, right, if you live with a prideful life, right, if you don't live a life of humility, this is exactly what it leads you to. This is exactly what happens, how you get in trouble, right? That you're not total submissive to him. We just pick and choose, right? It's like we're going through McDonald's. Jesus, I'll take that meal and that meal, take off this, right? I'll take that, you can have this. Doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. Right? When we are a disciple, a follower of Jesus, we submit all of our life. This is what he says. He says, unless you're willing to deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me daily, you cannot be my disciple. When you get nailed to the cross, it changes your perception. Right? When you're not scrolling through social media looking for suggestions to follow, when you get nailed to a cross, you stop making decisions. Right? So that's what it means to take up our cross daily and follow him. You become totally under the control of another. That's what it means. Let's be honest. A lot of you follow Jesus like I follow Andrew Huberman. Right, you're like, hey, yeah, he's a really smart guy. He's got a lot of great suggestions. I'll do these and these. Oh, right, I'll feel better eventually. But what he says over and over and over again about relationships, about money, right, I'm not ready for those yet. You cannot be a disciple of Jesus and live that way. Discipleship means plain and simple, full submission to Jesus. It means you forsake, right? You forsake all of that, right? All that he has forbidden and pursue all that he has prescribed. We like to talk about coming to Jesus as bringing peace in our lives and fulfillment. And that's true. He's wonderful. He does bring peace to your life. But I'm telling you, if you're really serious about Jesus, and I believe that by you being here today and this morning, right, that you are, right, it means obedience to him is going to take, listen, 180-degree turn. Opposite of the direction of the way that you want to go. Will you follow him there? Will you follow him there? Listen. This whole concept of discipleship, right? We said, hey, man, you better be in your rabbi's hip pocket, right? That his dust gets you dirty. Your rabbi that you say that is by coming here, I believe that you follow, is not going to go and do the things places you go and the things you do. Places I go, the things I do. I want to follow that guy wherever he goes. Right? I want to humble myself and follow him. Teenagers, if he tells you to break up with somebody, you going to do it? If he tells you to kick that friend group to the side, you going to do it? If your mama slaps you because you talk back to her, you going to quit? If he tells you to go serve over here, you going to do it? If he tells you to stop doing that habit, are you going to do it? If he tells you to quit your job and go to someplace else, you going to do it? If he tells you to stop being a jerk face to your spouse, you going to do it? Look straight at me right now. We got to stop playing, church. That's all I'm saying. Right? We got to stop playing. I'm not going to get skinny and keep eating Cheez-Its. I love me some Cheez-Its. I love sports movies. In 2004, Kurt Russell came out with a movie called Miracle. And it's a true story of the 1980 U.S. hockey team, right? And their unlikely journey through to the Olympic gold. Right? Kurt Russell plays Coach Brooks, who was the head coach of that team. And they brought in this old coach, and he agreed to take on a struggling U.S. hockey program. And it was a mess. It was, inflicted with all kinds of division and just, not going good, right? And Coach Brooks brings his initial roster, right, to the coaching staff, one of his assistant coaches, and it's all unpaid amateurs, college hockey players. And they'll be going up against the best professionals from the Soviet Union and Finland and Canada and Sweden. Right, everyone else brought the professionals in. Coach Brooks says, hey, take a look at this. Right, and the assistant coach is like, what's this? He says, now these are the people I'm taking to represent America in the Olympics. Right, the assistant coach says, you're kidding me, right? Like this is the final roster? Listen, coach, you're missing some of the best players that we have. Right, and Coach Brooks looks at him and says, I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right players. I'm not the best. I don't think I'm the best in anything. I don't know. I think we got an A team here. But you don't have to be. I'll roll with you every day. I think we're all here for such a time as this, right? And we're going to sit here. Here's what we do. Here's what I do, all right? Here's what I do. I sit here day to day, week to week, right? And I'm thinking my head is just going crazy on ideas and things that we got to do and programs we got to be, and we got to do this and we got to be here, right? And we got to use this, and hey, that's how my mind works. You know what? I'm thinking, man, we got to get the coolest program. We got to get this. We got to get that. No, we don't. We need to follow our rabbi. We need to get his dust all over us. Right? And the things that I tried to make a big deal and I tried to worry about and that I lose sleep on about how we're going to do this and how we're going to cook that and how we're going to be this and what our kids program is going to do, what our students program is going to do. If I follow our rabbi, if you follow our rabbi and we get dusty, guess what? We're going to seek and we're going to save the lost. Right? Because of whatever... Right, as the B team captain that I'm bringing to the table doesn't mean nothing to him, right? But because he is who he is, he's going to use that for my good, his glory. That's it, right? I need a bunch of disciples. I don't need any Christians. I don't need any Christians, right? I need disciples of Jesus. That's what we need. That's what we got to be. Let me give you and the one that people that have gone to street ministry. Joyce Gibby is a disciple of Jesus. What do you mean, Chris? I'm here to tell you, if Jesus Christ was here right now, he wouldn't be here right now. Do you understand that? He's going to be with Miss Gibby. He's going to be with Miss Gibby. Right? Listen, Miss Gibby, I can promise you from knowing her for all these years, does not have a 10-step program and all this structure that she runs that mission by. No. She has undetermined, unwavering faith in her God. Right? That he will supply all her needs. And she's dusty, man. She is so dusty. That's what we got to be. That's what we have got to be. There's a if you go to the street mission, there's a you ever notice that sign, Tommy? And it's, I can't remember the number, but it's something, so many thousand people that have come to Christ right there. They don't have these candle things. They don't have these pews. They don't have this carpet. They don't have that nice cross in the baptistry. Right? They don't have any of that. They got an altar. And people come preach gospel, and people are led to the foot of the cross. I'm glad we got this. I'm glad, man, this campus is amazing. It's amazing. I love it. Most of the time I love it. Sometimes I don't. All right? Man, but so how much more has he given us that we've got to go and seek and save the lost? Let's go. Right? Be a disciple. Leave that Christianity tag, right? And put the disciple tag on.